Hello, John Feldt here. This is the Blue Water Outlook Weekly Water Briefing for March 24th, 2013. Well, here is the precipitation that fell over the last week. I think there's some interesting trends here. This time of year can be very interesting, and last week was no exception. I usually start out with the heavier rain, but let's start out with the dry conditions this week. And as you can see over the southwest U.S., no rain whatsoever over the last 7 days. If we look over the upper Midwest, we see sort of a splotchy pattern. There was some snow pockets here and there, but it wasn't all that organized over that region. Now, you might have heard about the blizzard and heavy snow that moved from Colorado across Kansas, Missouri, and it's going to be moving east now over the next couple days. Over the southeast U.S., a widespread rain over the southeast U.S., and we're beginning to see these streakiness patterns here, and this is indicative of spring as we get thunderstorm activity, and there was a bit of severe weather, including hail over the southeast U.S. So we're definitely getting signs of winter up in the upper Midwest. We're getting signs of severe weather over the south, and along that boundary here, that's where we're getting active precipitation bands over these boundaries where the cold air and the warm air meets. Now, as far as the percent of normal rainfall over the last week or precipitation, you can see the main area above normal precipitation was over the southeast U.S. and parts of the Ohio Valley, and then well below normal precipitation over the southwest U.S. I thought I'd sort of step back here and look at the entire winter, and these are sort of gainers and losers as far as precipitation, and this is departure from normal over the last 90 days. So areas in yellow or red are increasing negative departures from normal. In other words, as we went through the winter, they did not receive enough rain, and then the areas in blue and green are above normal. Now, first off, as we get towards spring flood outlook, one of the things you notice is that large parts of the Midwest here had sort of neutral conditions, and that area has been very dry. So we would have liked to have seen more greens and blue in there, but at least there was normal precipitation, and that might help just a bit in that area. I think one of the clearest trends has been over the southeast U.S. this winter with this area in blue, and it's well above normal. It's 4 inches or 5 inches more than normal for that time period. And then over the far western U.S., very dry, despite some active weather over the Pacific Northwest from time to time. Alternating weeks have been pretty dry. So the snow pattern has really changed. For many weeks now it's been somewhat static. We've had this active snow track, and it's really been from northeast and eastern North Dakota across Minnesota, Wisconsin. That's been a very prevailing snow track all winter. But what I've been saying is it hasn't really been sagging south. Well, with this Arctic oscillation in an extreme negative phase, the snow band or the extent of snow has really started to sag south, and by the time next week's over, it's going to probably be in this area. So we really did see a progression south of the snow cover due to this very negative phased Arctic oscillation. And when we look at water equivalents, we're beginning to get significant water equivalents in these areas of dark blue. This is the recent snow. That's going to be filling in right through here. I'll show you in a minute. And then this is the most extreme with 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches or more of water equivalent on the ground in this area. And I'm going to talk about spring flooding in just a bit. But that's very significant in this area. This area here will probably melt off in a manageable fashion, and this is in very much still in a drought situation, so this will be a welcome rainfall once that welcome snow melt once that occurs in that area and help alleviate drought conditions. So this is the pattern of overall snow depth around the nation and also water equivalent. And the red line here shows the total percentage of the nation covered in snow. And I wanted to sort of show you what we've seen so far this winter. Well, we started off right at the beginning of the year with a very high percentage. I believe it was around 65%. Ever since then, through most of January into February, slowly going down, a little bit of pickup, slowly going down, and just recently we've sort of picked up again due to this enhancement and this negative Arctic oscillation that's really sort of dipped down again. But we never did get as much percentage as we started the year with on January the 1st. Now, the U.S. Spring Flood Outlook was updated issued this week by NOAA. and I wanted to point out just where major flooding is expected, moderate flooding is expected. And that's right in that active snow path that we've seen all winter so far. And even though major flooding is expected over parts of North Dakota and Minnesota, it's very localized and isolated in coverage. It's a small area. Now, there is some typical minor, maybe some moderate flooding over parts of the eastern and southeastern U.S., but I don't think this is going to be significant at this time. It looks like the hot spot will be here in the upper Midwest, but again, as I showed you with that water equivalent, it's going to be more localized, even though it could be extreme. Now, last week, if you listened to my briefing, you might have noticed that, remembered that I mentioned the Arctic Oscillation was going to dip to a seasonally low negative phase, and that's what it did here. You can see that it did bottom out, beginning to rise now. It's still well below what we've seen any time this winter so far, and that has brought very cold air dipping into the Midwest and into the eastern U.S. Along the boundaries of that cold air is when we get active precipitation patterns. Now, the forecast for the next week, as we get through the rest of March, it's going to continue to rise, and then as we get towards April, more of a closer to neutral at that time. Now, this is that thermal pattern I talk about when we have this negative phase Arctic oscillation. Cold air up in the upper Midwest, warm air over the southeast U.S. The cold air dips to the south, dips to the east, and then right in this gradient here is where we have our more active precipitation bands. In the cold air here, it's going to be that snow, and in the south band, it's going to be severe weather, and there was hail and heavier rain over the southeast U.S., and again, we saw that blizzard heavy snow event going across parts of the Midwest. So the big picture this week as far as the jet stream, the blue is early this week, and that's that classic Arctic oscillation dipping of the jet stream, and by late this week, it begins to sort of shift back to the north. Now, one of the factors is when we go from the transition into a negative phase, it can be very active. If we start to go back towards this neutral, it's not always quite as active. It's less active. So right now, I don't see a whole lot of energy embedded in this jet stream pattern. Early this week, we will have that snow event that'll be very significant as it moves off to the east, across parts of the Ohio Valley into the northeast U.S., but other than that, it looks like a fairly quiet week with not a lot of atmospheric energy, and we return to that more of a neutral type pattern. Now, the surface low tracks, and this is going to dominate where the heaviest precipitation is, does move, like I said, across the middle part of the nation up into the northeast, and this will be the more active track in this region. The colder air has settled in, and this will be the heaviest snow. The areas of blue I would focus on, and that will be early this week as it moves from Missouri across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. And even though that area has been wet and there is potential for some flooding, I don't think we've got to the point that we can say we don't need any more rain. I think we can still take this. We want to get a little bit of an excess before we go into summertime. So we're still to the point that this is a little bit more beneficial than not. But we are, in this particular area, we're all going to have to keep an eye on it because after this goes through, it probably will be a little bit wet. It would be nicer if this was a little bit more up in the Midwest here, that they could use it a lot more. But still, I think we can generally use this precipitation. So the 7-day forecast here for rainfall and snow, like I said, anywhere north of this line is going to be snow, heavy snow event. This is coming later in this week down in here. So pretty much a quiet week other than that one rain snow event, mainly snow, heavy snow event. Now looking ahead, this is a climate model, and I'm going to incorporate briefly a longer range or medium range forecast in my briefings. What I have here is from a climate model. This is week 1, and oranges are negative anomalies or below normal precipitation, greens above normal. And this is giving you the big trends, and it's showing this week pretty quiet, below normal precipitation. This is the area next week. It looks like above normal precipitation. Just a heads up, that's the area we're going to be looking at for the possibility of more significant precipitation from parts of the Midwest, say roughly Kansas, Oklahoma, and then off to the southeast. That's an area that looks like it could be a little bit more active on week 2 into the early part of April. So the takeaway points from this week's briefing: a heavy snow event will continue from Missouri on east and eventually northeast. Otherwise, a fairly quiet week with just light amounts of precipitation. I'd love to hear from you. As always, if you have any comments on what you like or how you use this briefing in your operations, I'd love to hear it. You can reach me at any time, john@bluewateroutlook.com, and I will be updating this briefing again next Sunday. Thank you for listening.